In today's video, we're going to learn how to play Uno No Mercy. If you don't already have the game, check out the link at the top of my description. If you use that link and buy Uno No Mercy, I get a small commission, so it would help support the channel and me. Before you start playing the game of Uno No Mercy, shuffle all of the cards. After you've shuffled sufficiently, deal 7 cards to every single player. Everyone then takes their cards. The remaining cards that are not dealt out are put face down, and you flip over the first card to see what color and number you start with. If this card is an action card, such as Skip or the 13 other action cards in here, keep flipping until you don't get an action card. This is also an action card. This 6 is not an action card, so we would start on a blue 6 to begin the game. The player to the dealer's left will be the first one to play. This pile is known as the discard pile. In order to win Uno No Mercy, there are 2 win scenarios. One way to win is just like in regular Uno. If you get rid of all of your cards first, you are the winner. The other way to win is to eliminate all of the other players. If you ever have 25 or more cards in your hand at one time, you lose the game and are eliminated. Until there is one player standing or one player has gotten rid of all of their cards, the game continues. In order to play a card down on the discard pile, your card either has to match the color or match the number. In order for a player to play a card, they must have a card that either matches the color, the number, or is a wild card. In this case, I have a blue 2. They don't match number-wise, but they do match color-wise, so I can play the 2. It is then the next player's turn. If it becomes a player's turn and they do not have a color, number, or wild card that matches the discard pile, they have to draw cards from the draw pile until they get a card that can be played. In this case, I drew 2 cards, and when I got this 3, I can play this 3 down, but I have to keep this 0 in my hand. It is then the next player's turn after this is completed. Let's now go over all of the action cards in this game. First is the action cards that appear in every Uno game, such as the reverse. When a reverse is played, the order of play is flipped. So if I were to play this card, and it would have been this player's turn next, the order of play is reversed, and it would be the previous player's turn next, and this player does not get to play. The order of play is then completely switched until another reverse is played. If a skip is played, the next player loses their turn, and it skips them to go to the next player after them. It is then their turn. If a +2 card is played, the next player has to draw 2 cards and loses their turn. Let's now talk about action cards that don't appear in regular Uno, but are in Uno No Mercy. For example, the +4. The next player has to draw 4 cards instead of just 2, and they lose their turn. Next up is the Skip Everyone card. When this card is played, every other player gets skipped, and the person who played the Skip Everyone card gets to play again immediately. Now let's talk about the numbers 0 and 7, because they do something special in this game. Whenever a 0 is played, say the order of play is going clockwise like so. Whenever this 0 is played, every single player has to give their hand to the next person in order of play. So everyone would move their hand 1 spot, in this case to the left, or if we're going counterclockwise, to the right. And then play resumes as normal. If this hand played the 0, then the next player in line would then just play whatever they want afterward. If a player plays a 7, they get to swap their hands with whoever they want. Say this is my hand and I want to swap with this player. I force them to swap our hands. Then play resumes as normal. Since I played the 7 and we're going clockwise, this player would go next. Next up is the Discard All card. This card must match the color of whatever is on the discard pile. Whenever you play this card, take all the other cards with the same color in your hand. In this case, I have 2 more yellow cards, and put them on the discard pile, and then put the Discard All card on top. If there are any action cards in your yellow card, such as this reverse, those actions are not played out. It is then the next player's turn. Now let's talk about wild cards. First up is the Reverse Wild Draw 4 card. Whenever you play this card, first, order of play is reversed, so the player who played previously would have to draw all 4 of these cards, not the player who would go next like a usual wild card. So, say I played this card down and we are going this way, the order of play would then be flipped and the previous player who's sitting here would have had to draw those 4 cards. The player who played the Wild Reverse Draw 4 card then changes the color. Say I wanted to change it to blue, it would now be blue and players would have to play a blue card on top of this. Next up is the Draw 6 card. The next player in play must draw 6 cards. It's just like the Draw 4 from regular Uno but with 6 cards instead of 4. The player who played this wild card then gets to change the color of play. Say I wanted this to be yellow, we now have to play yellow cards on top of this wild card. Next up is the Wild's +10 card. This is just like the Wild +6, but the next player has to draw 10 cards instead of 6. These 10 cards are then given to the next player, and the player who played the wild card then gets to change the color. Say they wanted it to be green, we now have to play green cards. And now for the last wild card. The Wild Roulette card. This wild is different from all the other wild cards because the next player gets to change the color of what's on the discard pile. When they call a color, they are forced to draw cards from the draw pile until they draw the color they called. Let's say they change the color to red. They then have to draw cards from this pile until they get a red, while revealing all of the cards to the other players. So far I still haven't gotten a red, so I have to keep drawing. If you draw a wild card, this does not count as the color you called. You must draw that color that you called. Now that this red 3 is drawn, you take those cards, lose your turn, and then it is the next player's turn. And now for the last and possibly the most fun rule in the entire game of Uno No Mercy. Stacking is allowed in Uno No Mercy. What this means is, say I play this wild +10 card. If the next player also has a wild +10 card, they can play theirs on top, and the player that would go after them then has to draw all of these cards unless they also have a wild +10. You can do this with any of the draw cards, say draw 2, draw 4, wild reverse draw 4, and wild draw 6. As long as it is a draw card, it can be stacked. If it is the player's turn and they cannot match the wild card on top, that player has to draw all of the cards that were stacked. In this case, I stacked one wild draw 10 on top of another wild draw 10, so the next player that goes after me has to draw 20. This can be very powerful to help you get rid of a card, but also help you draw less cards. And remember, if you get 25 or more cards, you are eliminated from the game, so this can also get somebody out instead of forcing you to draw cards. If you run out of cards in the draw pile, you can simply reshuffle the discard pile and make that the new draw pile. So we would take this discard pile, shuffle it together, and this would be our new draw pile. Now there's two victory methods in this game. One, you can either not keep score and just reshuffle the deck when a game ends, or you can keep score. There are specific scoring rules that Uno No Mercy provides. If a player has 0 cards in their hands, every other player's cards are added up and that score is given to the player who went out. Cards numbered 0 to 9 are worth their face value, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 points. Any action card is worth 20 points, so your skip, your reverse, your skip everyone, those cards. Any wild card is worth 50 points, so a reverse wild draw 4, draw 6, and draw 10. And if you eliminate another player by making them have 25 or more cards in their hand, you get 250 points. The first player to reach 1,000 points wins in this alternate victory method. And that's how you play Uno No Mercy. Once again, if you don't already have the game, consider checking the link at the top of my description. It's an affiliate link. If you purchase Uno No Mercy through my shop, then I get a small commission, so you'd be helping support the channel and getting the card game. So I'd really appreciate it.